Alright, there's a lot happening in these chapters. Rand, Mat, and Perrin all discover they had the same dream of the Dark One. Rand also meets Min, who shares that she sees pieces of the pattern and that they are all somehow tied together. Rand also finds out that Padan Fain survived the Winter Night Trolloc attack. Rand and Mat have a fun run in with the White Cloaks. Nynaeve has followed them and has arrived at the inn, much to Lan's surprise. Min tells Rand that Nynaeve is also part of the pattern and that things are becoming sharper. Rand asks about his father's fever dream, and Nynaeve says that when Tam returned to Emmonsfield, he brought a red-haired Outlander wife and a baby. So there's a lot to dig through, so let's go deeper into The Eye of the World by Robert Jordan, here on the Doctors Who podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Doctors Who podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Chip.
My name is Brian.
And as Chip informed us in the intro, today we're covering chapters 15 and 16. We are getting to the point where quite a bit is happening from a plot development and character development as well. So why don't we jump in, and Chip, tell us what you thought.
Well, as I kind of talked about in the intro, there's a lot in both of these chapters. There's really a lot in chapter 15, and I think a lot of foreshadowing stuff. So there's things that we see with the dead rats that are found in the inn with the broken back, so that ties back to Rand's dream. And it makes you wonder how much control the Dark One has in the real world. If he can break the backs of the rats, could he impact Rand, Mat, and Perrin, or is it kind of limited to those things that he uses as his eyes and ears in the world with, rats and ravens and all that stuff? We do realize that Perrin, Mat, and Rand all had the same dream, and then Padan Fain's still alive. So all that stuff that I talked about. But the big one that I always am fascinated with Min every time I've read these books. And, I always want to know more about her, but her visions are so fascinating, and how she sees pieces of the pattern, and over time things become clearer. But just to kind of go through, we could probably spend an hour just talking about her, all the foreshadowing that we have in her visions. But we see Lan with 7 ruined towers. We see Mat with a red eagle, an eye on a balance scale, a dagger with a ruby, a horn, a laughing face. Perrin, she sees a wolf, a broken crown, and trees flowering. Rand, she sees a sword that isn't a sword, a golden crown of laurels, and all this other stuff. So, and some of them, having read these, it's like, oh, I know where that's going. And I didn't realize that some of the stuff was planted that early. So we've already heard mention of the horn. And in, I think, chapter 16, Thom is telling the story of the great hunt of the horn. So, that's something that, and the second book is called The Great Hunt. So, we know some of these things are going to come to fruition pretty quick, but some of these are planting seeds that are way out there. So I don't know. There's a lot going on in these, and it's good stuff.
So today is, as they wake up, this is the first day in the big town of Baerlon, which really isn't all that huge, but huge by Eamon's Field standards. So it's kind of fun to see the perspective of the world from Mat, Perrin, and Rand. But I was interested in seeing Fain again. I had kind of written him off as either, I wasn't sure if he had been a part of the Trolloc attack before, but they just suddenly stopped mentioning him before, and I was kind of curious what happened to him. So I'm glad that he's alive, although I'm still not necessarily sold on who he is. He still seems awfully flighty and seems to know more than he lets on. I do like the confrontation with the Children of the Light. I thought there was some good character growth there by Rand, because that's something, he's a little bit more cheeky than he would have been back in Eamon's Field. So nice to see a little bit of spirit out of him. I thought that was kind of a fun interaction. And then also the return of Nynaeve. I was kind of curious when my wife, who has read the series, said that was her. Kind of confused. I thought she was only in one scene. So nice to see her back again too. So maybe a little bit more development on what the wisdom is. And I thought Moraine and Egwene and Nynaeve kind of make the interesting trio. So I'm interested to see where this goes from here.
So for me, and this is something that stretches all the way through the books, but how Robert Jordan has woven like the dream world into what happens is fascinating to me. So, Chip, you mentioned that, how the rats' backs were broken in the inn and things like that, and how they all three had the same dream. So that to me is really fascinating. And from my perspective, knowing how things unfold 4, 5, or even 10 books out, it's cool to see kind of like some seeds planted here. Brian, I don't think I'm spoiling anything, but I'm trying to be very careful, because most of my observations are really around, oh wow, they're kind of like to Chip's point, it's like they're doing some of this and planting some of these seeds really early. I do enjoy also that Thom has kind of become, for lack of better terms, their confidant. So that's a neat relationship. I like that relationship a lot. So those are my takeaways. Okay.
I think it's interesting how he uses Thom almost like breaking the fourth wall, like in a television show, where through Thom's stories and the stuff that he's throwing out there, it's like he's not just throwing it out there because they're cool stories. It's stuff that's important to the plot and things that it's like, hey, pay attention, because this story, you're going to see where this ties back in somewhere down the road. And it's almost like Thom, is just telling us this stuff. I know it's through the story, but it just feels like it's kind of that kind of aside to like, hey, readers, this is kind of important. You might want to pay attention here.
Yeah.
So it is interesting how much they lean on Thom here, as he is the most well-traveled of the group outside of Lan and Lady Moraine. But
I would say he's probably even more traveled than them. But
yeah, you're probably right. But I still don't get this. They trust him innately. Like they want to tell someone their dream because they can't hold it in any longer. And it's like, I don't know. I'm still, I guess, not familiar enough with Thom. Like, remember, they haven't known him for very long either. It's like,
well, but if you think about it, Thom was there when Rand's father was sick, and they were suggesting that Moraine could do that, and Thom was like, maybe it's not a good idea. And he obviously has some distrust of Moraine and Aes Sedai. So I almost feel like with the behavior he's exhibited in front of them, he almost feels like more of a kindred spirit than anyone else in that group. I mean, that just based on those interactions. And I'm not reading into something that happens in the future at all. It's just, from their perspective and what they've seen, I think there's an element of trust there because they can relate to his position.
And with Thom's line of work, his, the way he makes money is by catering to an audience and entertaining an audience and making them feel like he's a friend of them. So not that he's treating them like an audience, but I think that they see something in him that is endearing, and and I think he's the oldest one of the group, so he, there's something maybe grandfatherly a little bit, or father figure-ish, to them.
Mm-hmm.
Brian, will you be growing out long mustaches like Thom?
One can only hope.
It's not
Michelle
white.
would like me to do that.
Yeah, but your hair's not white yet.
Yet.
No, it's getting there.
Mine's pretty gray when it grows out, so not white.
All right.
There's always next year.
And
sound like a Cubs fan. Anyway.
Yeah. But
yeah.
And then Chip, you mentioned Min, and I thought all of that was pretty fascinating. So Brian, I'm going to put you on the spot again, and I think we're going to do this a lot because I think having the differing viewpoints between first-time reader and not is important. But what did you get out of Rand's interaction with Min? I mean, she was explaining what she was seeing. So, what was your takeaway there?
A lot of it was right over my head. I mean, first
Yeah.
time through, honestly, it just she said these things, and I kind of get the feeling like just from the name Wheel of Time, like time is cyclical or time like this is the return of an era or maybe something to that extent, but I don't really understand any of the significance to it.
So I would agree with you 100% there. And we could even go as far as like the prologue or Rand's dream with
Mm-hmm.
Balsamon, where they made the illusion that we've done this before, we're going to do this again as long as the wheel of time turns, basically. So these things do happen.
Yes.
It's I'm gonna equate it kind of to, I don't know if either of you have read Stephen King's Dark Tower, but
Yes.
if I'm recalling correctly,
Where they've all done this before and they will be
there will
doing
be
it again.
differences and variations, but the major themes continue to play out. You know, the dragon will face the
Yeah, so
dark
maybe
one, and you know all that.
when you assume that the prologue is really the end of the last turning of the wheel or the last cycle, and that the new
Mm-hmm.
cycle is spinning up when we
Yeah.
arrive in Demon's Field. And
So yeah, you're spot on. Good job.
Yes. I I am kind of curious though. Not that I want to draw too many similarities with what we've read before, but like there is a little bit of like in Name of the Wind, there was the girl that he ran into all the time.
Oh,
Um, wow, I'm really blanking on her
D
name.
starts with a D.
started
Uh,
with a D.
yeah. Anyway,
Yes, her.
uh, but it almost feels like, is he going to run into her? Like,
Denna.
how closely are they entered? Dana, there we go. How closely is Rand with Min? Is it kind of like the relationship with Dana? Like, is he just going to start running into her all the time? Like, I get the feeling this is not. Well, she said they're going to meet again, presumably in this lifetime.
Everything she
And
says comes true, she said.
yes,
Yeah.
I also like the imagery of the sparks. I thought that was kind of a fascinating revelation as well. Just uh, soothsayer and psychic and mystic, like all of these things kind of put together. And she's a very odd character. Like it
Hmm.
makes sense of the world, but it's just very different from the rest of the writing.
Right. And
Yeah, I mean, even she dresses different. She wears her hair
yeah.
short. She just is,
Hmm.
doesn't fit in anywhere. But
Oh, yes. That that's something I wanted to touch on is they keep talking about hair in this. Like whether the hair is braided or not braided, or like apparently hair is a big deal, especially among the women folk, like it signifies class. And maybe we can go into this on a different time too. But
just wait. Just wait
anyway,
till you get to like scenes in the White Tower and like Tarvalon and things like that. Because there's
okay.
many
yeah,
conversations about how they brush their hair for 100 strokes each morning. It's a crazy amount of
Ooh.
detail. Like
and I have no idea how many times Nynaeve tugs her braid when she's angry or frustrated, or
yeah,
because she's already done it
yeah.
Yeah, she's done it
a
at
couple of
least twice,
yeah.
maybe three
Does
times.
does Michelle do that, Brian?
Uh, well,
I feel like
she tugs on her braid, but only because she can't tug on mine because I've got
that's
nothing.
fair.
So
But
we're talking about men
Yeah.
again. So one of the last things she says to Rand in that first instance where they meet, she says, "Go then. It's not like you can escape." And if she sees the people in the pattern, does that mean that the pattern is fairly well set and can't be changed? Or, like Chris said earlier, that maybe some things kind of change along the way, but really the end game is still the end game. But what is the end game of the Dark One? Is he trying to break this pattern and destroy the world
mhm.
or all the worlds? Or is he just playing along to play along? I guess I don't know what the end game is
So
for
I'm
him.
I'm gonna say this, and it's not necessarily a spoiler. It's just kind of the mechanic of the world is that You think of like these threads in the pattern, and you think of like a loom or something that weaves these things. The threads are pretty much set, and there's room for like a little shifting here and there. And I think the longer they're set, the more they're entrenched. But there's they say if you're part of the pattern, you're part of the pattern, and there's not much you can do about it. But there's room for like a little personal freedom and a little deviation. So, as I understand it,
Yeah.
maybe we should talk about Nynaeve.
Yeah, we could.
And
I love how Jordan characterizes her so well, early on here, where even just that scene where she's sitting at the table, she says, I just followed your trail. And Lan's kind of like, you did what? If you can follow a trail that I've tried to hide, or, your father taught you well. If you can do that even in the Borderlands. And then this is something, I wouldn't have caught this the first time, but then Nynaeve kind of blushes and puts her head down like, and that's something that I think Rand said, that's something that is just out of character for her. So
she had like a couple observations that really drive that there's some growth happening with the main characters in the short time they've been gone. Because she looks at Rand and she says, that sword, that it fits you now. It's only been a week, and it looks like it's a part of you. And then like he kind of pushes back when she makes a suggestion, and she's like, you've grown there too, because a week ago you wouldn't have questioned me no matter what. So and what's interesting to me here, and I realize it's done for like exposition and just explaining things, what happened after they left Emond's Field, but she pulls just Rand aside and divulges all this stuff, which
the others kind of left when
Okay.
she came out of the room. So
Okay,
so Rand was really the only one still standing there, and
that makes
that's why
more
he
sense.
popped out.
That makes more sense. Okay.
But he's more cautious and questioning of authority at this point. He's more forward, less timid. Just all those things that you were saying too, that he's willing to push back and say, no, we're going to keep going on this journey. We need to get answers. We can't let the Trollocs come back to Two Rivers.
And he also tells her about what Tam said during his fever dream, which I don't think he's mentioned that to anybody yet. So it's almost like they had a little moment just then, and he's like,
because I think that, or I think Rand asked what she and Moraine talked about, and she said something about Moraine taking an interest in his birth, and then
figuring out
this
if any of the
conversation.
three of them were not born in the Two Rivers. Yeah. Yep. So, and spoilers. Well, not really spoilers, because they already said he was.
It's a spoiler to Rand.
He
didn't know.
That's a good point. Yeah. So.
Hell yeah.
He didn't know this. So from his point of view, this was probably a shocker, but maybe not so much, because I think the seed was planted when his dad died during the fever dream. But now he gets that clarification that Sam came back to Two Rivers with a wife and a baby.
Yep.
But we still haven't really figured. But we get this idea here that Rand. So there are three who are important from the get-go. You have Mat, Perrin, and Rand. And then the question was dropped: were any of you born outside of town? Was anyone else born outside of Emond's Field? And so now we have a clear distinction that we as the reader knows, but it made it sound like Nynaeve probably knew it, or like she at least had a good grasp of it, but we get the feeling like no one else does. And so it just draws, again, that special uniqueness to Rand that we know, but the Dark One doesn't, or whatever else. So
Well, and she made a comment, that, in his youth, Tam went off and did foolish, adventurous boy things, and when he came back, he had a wife and a child, and So does she remember that? And if she does, how much older than Rand is she for her to remember that? Or was this just
Well,
like
Rand is
secondhand knowledge from the previous wisdom or somebody on the
because what
women's circle or
is
something?
Rand supposed to be
I think so.
16-ish? I thought she was like 20 something. Is she not even, or maybe she's not even that much older?
I mean, I guess I
Now,
was thinking 5 years, but that's a guess. So,
But even at
does
5, with the type of kid she was, she probably noticed that, or maybe that was the talk of the
yeah,
town when Tam came back.
that's true.
or maybe she gets the Reverend Mother abilities. I mean, again,
Ooh, as the
Oh, there
wisdom.
you go. Yeah.
Rand is the Kwisatz Haderach. Yeah. Dang it! I just completely messed up the. Anyway.
No, I
That's
think
pretty
you
close.
got it. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
anyway, so next time we will be discussing chapters 17 and 18. We do drop episodes every Thursday afternoon / evening, depending on your time zone. So please check back. Alternatively, we invite you to subscribe to our channel and click the bell notification so that when we do post new content, you get notified. If you liked what you watched, please hit the like button. We like thumbs up. Thumbs up are good. We also would appreciate it if you use the comments section. We know that there's a lot happening here. We didn't touch on everything. It would frankly be impossible to do that without hours of time, and let's be frank, nobody has that. So please let us know your favorite parts down below. Tell us if there was something that we missed, something we misunderstood, or if you think we're crazy, because that's probably not far off. We will see you next time. Thank you for watching, and in the meantime, Brian.
Alonzi.